if you hire and recruit like-minded people, you're a step ahead because you have a much, much stronger chance of succeeding. So if you can make it clear to people outside of your world what your company stands for, what your purpose is, what your values are, then it's easier for you to attract people who believe in the same things and see the world through the same pair of eyes as you do. And then you have a head start.
Welcome to the Hospitality Maverick podcast with me, Michael Tingsager. We at Hospitality Mavericks are here to inspire leaders to create heart-centered and profitable businesses from the inside out, the kind that both employees and customers love and support. And thank you to BizSimply for sponsoring this episode as our show partner. BizSimply is the all-in-one HR, workforce management, rota and operations software designed and built by hospitality experts to make every shift run like clockwork. And we join forces to help the industry to find new ways to become even more innovative in how we lead our people, how we operate, and how we grow our businesses to how we serve our customers. Together we want to share strategies and tools that can make the industry thrive long-term, not just survive. In this episode, we'll be talking about the labor crisis in hospitality. And for that, we have a great guest, Marco Reick, who is the People and Talent Director for QOOT. We start the conversation talking about what QOOT priorities are as they are reopening their brands and how they're setting themselves up for success. We take a deep dive into the staffing crisis, what Marco also calls the Grey Rhino event, which is a highly probable, high impact and yet neglected event. And Marco explains, it's always important to create great employee experience, but that's not enough any longer. The problem is bigger than what you as an industry, but also as an individual business can solve yourself. The government needs to be involved to create more flow of workforce from outside the UK. We talk about how tech is part of the solution, and Marco makes it clear less is more. You have to think about how tech is impacting the employee experience and how it actually adds value to their life. He gives his view on how hospitality will look the next 12 to 18 months, and he is very optimistic about the times ahead. We just need the talent to back it up. Along the way, we visited many other subjects: leadership in crisis, technology's role in customer experience, recruitment, employer branding, and much more. Before you tune in, please sign up to our weekly newsletter on hospitalitymavericks.com, packed with more Maverick insights, strategies, and tools. Now grab notebook, pen, coffee, and let's get started. I'm really excited about talking about today's conversation because actually it builds probably a bit from a conversation I had with Marco Reick about a year ago. So Marco is back again, where we talked about early in the pandemic how companies should actually manage this situation and get the most out of it, and which kind of work cultures would actually, really thrive on the other side. And we already there touched about there was potentially a talent crisis in the hospitality industry. And we didn't know 100% where we go, but we thought, both of us, there would be probably some challenges as we start to reopen again. And it seems like now this is a very relevant topic. We talked about it, and Marco joined me on Friday in Clubhouse as well, and all over the globe there was some kind of talent crisis going on. Depending on regions, some had bigger issues than others. And also it became very clear in these conversations, because Mark also put a piece out on LinkedIn about is there a grey rhino in the room, and he will probably come back and talk a bit more about that. And also, do we actually have enough labor actually to move forward? There's so many unanswered questions. But today we want to try and cover that, but also talk a bit about how do we actually then make it, how do we fix the challenge, the problem, and how do we do our best as a hospitality business going forward with that? So with that said, welcome to the show, Marco. It's a great pleasure to have you back. Almost a year after the last conversation.
Almost a year. Hello, Michael, and thanks for having me back after all this time. A lot's happened in the last 12 months, right?
Yeah, and you changed a bit of role as well. You have changed. You're back as a people director. Maybe you want to give the elevator pitch yourself and what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I joined QOOT, or Sysban, more like Sysban is the parent company who I work for. QOOT is part of the Sysban portfolio. I joined the company sort of slap bang in the middle of lockdown one. And it was a bit of a baptism of fire because we obviously had the same challenges that everybody else had. And all the while we're trying to keep a business afloat, keep our people engaged and happy, and our customers ideally as well. So, yeah, we operate both in the UK and internationally, mainly in the Middle East. The majority of the sites are in the Middle East. We operate, we mainly invest in. So Sysban is an investment vehicle for the hospitality industry. We invest in lots of different businesses. In the UK, you would have heard of By Chloe, the Gentlemen Baristas, the Lebanese Bakery, and then there is a new, really, really exciting bakery concept that we are just about to be launching. It's called Chestnut. If you haven't done so already, go onto Instagram, have a look at Chestnut Bakery, opening on Elizabeth Street in Belgravia on the 17th of May. Finally, we were ready to open a long while ago, but obviously what was the point? So we thought by the time we're allowed to let people into our beautiful building and let them taste amazing baked goods and food as well. It's not just bakery; you can get like lunches and dinners as well. We're really quite excited about it. We've got 3 sites lined up for Chestnut Bakery already for this year. So by the autumn, there'll be 3 sites in London and 1 abroad already. And then, yeah, hopefully that's the beginning of a great journey. But yeah, that's what we do in a nutshell.
That's very interesting because you have this portfolio business, but what is it in where you are now operating international? What is the top business priorities right now for you as you are trying to find a way back into the new normal?
Do you know what? The focus has sort of shifted throughout, and I haven't since I started 12 months ago. I haven't really had business as usual yet. So that focus has shifted all along. So initially we had to restructure the company. We effectively had to restructure the company again after the first restructure, which is probably not that uncommon. But also, given the fact that we operate in different territories, different countries have had different versions of this pandemic. So we, Saudi Arabia, which is our biggest market, they closed the country down in May last year, and all those Saudis who would normally spend their money in Europe in the summer, they would spend it within. So actually within the country, they had relative freedom for a long period of time, which means that we've actually posted some really good results despite the pandemic initially, because all those Saudis stayed in Saudi Arabia, which was quite good. But at the same time, in terms of the top priorities, the main thing right now is in all of the markets across the territories that we operate in, is to get the businesses ready, to get the people ready, to make sure that the customers are having the best possible experience. Because let's face it, I don't know, you probably think the same, Michael. I have to say, I was so looking forward to going to the pub again. And obviously you don't want to be disappointed, right? So, so therefore it's just amazing to be part of active hospitality life again, and we don't want to disappoint anyone. We want to make sure that people want to come back and can't wait to come back. So we have in the last few months run programs across all of our businesses, all of the businesses that we invest in, to make sure that everybody is ready and the best they can possibly be. So we want to delight our customers. We want to get the teams engaged and excited. Even though the lockdown 3, I have to say, was probably the most difficult one in terms of team engagement, because there's probably a little bit of lockdown fatigue that has set in. But overall, look, the teams are ready. People, by and large, wanted to come back from furlough, wanted to come back to work. We did what we could to support them. So we've run a lot of programs, a Comeback Confident campaign, which is still ongoing, which we run across our internal social media, which is centered around number one, confidence in knowledge, number two, confidence in safety, and then thirdly, feeling confident. So it's all about retraining. It's about COVID safety, and it's about what's going on in your head to make sure that you're mentally prepared for this brave new world that we're facing.
Have you guys, as you work on these campaigns, been looking at the people journey you had and said, okay, we actually need to redesign that people journey and people strategy around our business to make it work in the new world, no matter how well we actually can predict the new world?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Everybody thought they were really good on things like online learning, for example, but I don't know how many people can actually, with hindsight, say, yeah, we were amazing already. So therefore, there's nothing that we had to add because we had all of the infrastructure in place to make sure that our people could learn everything in a different way. So we certainly couldn't. So we had to invest a lot in our online learning platforms to make sure that we deliver the content in a really exciting and engaging way, because I think even online learning has been on a journey for years and years and years, and it's not. I remember when it first started, it was all very dry, and you're going through the motions and ticking boxes. Whereas these days there are systems and programs out there where you can engage people in a much more interactive way. Short, snappy video content that is a lot easier to digest. So we've worked hard on sort of every project that we normally never had time to, all these great ideas that we've had, we put into practice. So we effectively overhauled all of our online learning to make sure that it's fit for purpose. Interestingly, we sought feedback from our teams, not just on the online learning, but also on how we engage with them, the benefits that they get, etc. But it was a time to take stock. So we've aligned the people culture to this new world in an ongoing process, resulting then in the end in making sure actually what this is all about is you as the individual. We need to take you by the hand. We need to make sure that all together as one team, you're going to be the best you could possibly be when we reopen our restaurants, so you can delight our customers, and you feel good about it too. So that was sort of the overarching goal, and we're working hard to achieve that.
Within that has been things in the way you, for example, recruit that you had to think very differently, because we in a moment we're also going to talk about the talent crisis, as I mentioned in the beginning. But have you really need to start rethinking how you actually did things as well within the people practices, not only in the strategic approach?
There are really practical things like, obviously, recruiting is a really good example, Michael, that you can't really meet people face to face as you would before. So we've done that largely online, largely through videos, and in new ways that we wouldn't have considered appropriate before. And guess what? It works somehow. So I think there are learnings for everyone in this, where we probably would have poo-pooed the idea of running an online recruitment process. I know some companies are more akin to that than others, but we've learned that way, and we learned to do it right, learn to do it in a way that it's still engaging for the applicant on the recruitment side. Because you've got to bear in mind that I always think every applicant is also a customer, and we want them, even if unfortunately they're a no, which happens, then we want them still to feel good about themselves and still feel good about us as a company and as a potential employer that they unfortunately didn't manage to be successful with. But it's about building relationships with people. That's what we do, right? And it's quite easy to get that wrong if it's an online process, because it could potentially be a bit transactional. So the art is, I suppose, to make it personable as possible, even though you don't meet in person.
You have already talked, Marco, about online learning has evolved with technology. We just touch on the recruitment process, and then we know that from the fact in the first part of the pandemic, a lot of restaurant businesses really rushed to get their customer journey digitalized, and now you have all these revenue streams that suddenly is created over the pandemic. Before a restaurant, you can only go in and order. Suddenly you can order in 3 different ways. You can eat at home and you can cook with them at home, and so on and so on. Will that also reflect on the people journey? You believe that technology is going to play an integral part as we move forward, more than it already have done, and actually it's going to help us with the heavy lifting of the heavy people practices sometimes?
Yeah, but I think very much so. I mean, the art will then be, you can easily overload people with technology as well. So I very much believe in simplicity. So in an ideal scenario, I would have one app, say for team members, and have every other system integrated into that to make sure that I have the same great experience for our own people that I would invest in for customers. I wouldn't expect a customer to use 3 or 4 different apps when they're in store. I'd do my homework and make sure that they have a great experience. So the same principle should apply to team members as well. So why should a team member use 4 or 5 different apps? So I think it's important to make sure that we invest in the right tech that we can integrate, so we have a great experience for the team member as well. Because you've got to bear in mind, everybody uses different kinds of systems. So you have your HR system where you would have your normal database, maybe your pay slips coming through that, your absence requests, your rotas and shifts are on there, you're clocking in and out. That may be 1, that may be 2 systems already, so you're good if it's 1. But then you have a comms system on top of that. We use Hasty Pay as well. We've just introduced that to make sure that we do our bit for team members' financial well-being as well. So that's another app. So you have your training app. So potentially before you start, a team member has 5 apps on their phone for work. So it's not something that I would expect a customer to go through, and I don't think it's a great experience. So therefore, it's up to us to make sure that there is a great experience for the team member, and that it's easy for them to get the most out of these systems. So they should be seamless, they should be integrated, and it's difficult to have that in one solution. So yeah, it'll be a big part. But you're right on the customer journey as well. I've mentioned at the beginning we're opening Chestnut Bakery in Belgravia, and we actually want to provide a service which is it's based around the idea of the baker's dozen, really, which is obviously 13, so always a little bit extra. So we want to do a little bit more for customers, and therefore offer customers the choice of the style of service that they prefer. Because you mentioned quite rightly, all of a sudden tech has entered the customer journey in a way that we didn't quite see coming that quickly. It's now the norm that you have QR codes. They've had a big renaissance. QR codes on tables, and you can order from there. So how far do you take it? How much or how little human to human interaction are you going to have in a table service setting? And we want to achieve actually a scenario whereby it's up to the customer. The customer can choose to order from a human, or order online, or through an app, or from the QR code. We just need to help customers understand the journey, so it's really easy for them. But yeah, so therefore the jury's out, probably, because so much tech has now entered the arena. Now let's let the battle begin.
Yeah, and it's going to be very interesting, because I believe it can become as big as even the customer journey to digitalize the employee journey. I think it's very interesting you come from it with that perspective of it has to be as good as a journey as the customers, because again, you're creating an experience for the employees. And it's a very interesting dilemma you brought up with the number of apps. I can see that as well, because how many apps do you want to log into when you go to work? one. You don't want to log into 5. So again, yeah, that's a very interesting challenge coming ahead, and you see it as an integral part. But then I want us to move the conversation, because tech can be maybe part of this challenge we are facing now, because there's a big gray rhino in front of us, you said, and I'm going to let you explain what you mean with that. But we have a talent crisis. It seems like now, as we start, you wrote that article, there's been a number of other people, and actually, funny enough, this morning I've seen 3 different articles in Propel, Peter Backman, talking about staff shortage. Is it short term, is it long term, and they're especially focusing on London. But what is your perspective, Marco, from a talent crisis point of view?
Oh, right. So, the thing is, so I wrote this article, and the reason why I wrote this article is because I experienced it firsthand, and I thought we need to make a little bit of noise. It's just getting quite frustrating. The thing is, the reason why I called it a grey rhino is because, for those who don't know, a grey rhino event is an event that you can see coming, whereas a black swan event takes you by surprise. So a black swan comes, ta-da, there's a crisis. Like, there's an argument, is this pandemic a black swan event or not? It's the same argument goes for the 2008-9 financial crisis. Was it a black swan or was it a grey rhino? I am 100% confident that the talent crisis that the UK hospitality is facing is a grey rhino event. And when the time comes, nobody can say we didn't see it coming. Because I remember having conversations, not just months ago, but years ago. And then if you go back a few years and look at what's happened since, then it's quite easy to assume next steps, what's going to happen in the next few months. So a few years ago, or just say pre-pandemic, right? So the economy is booming, the UK is growing. People are coming to the UK from Europe, and free movement of people is still in place. The situation that we found ourselves in is that the hospitality industry has been growing quite significantly over the last 15, 20 years, and has continued to grow its share as, one of the biggest, the third largest employer by number of employees in the UK, over 3 million people working in the hospitality industry, massive contributions to the exchequer. So that's been happening over time. And all throughout that time, ever since I have worked in the hospitality industry, there was never a time where me and my colleagues would have said, you know what, recruiting is the easiest thing on the planet because of all these people who are available. That's not happened. I genuinely don't recall that ever, that everybody was going like, oh, look at all these chefs. We have, amazing people that are available. They just weren't. So pre-pandemic, it's boomtown. We don't have enough people. We didn't, and I keep hammering on about this, we didn't have a skill shortage. I mean, we did as well, but we predominantly had a labor shortage pre-pandemic. We had not enough people in order to meet the supply to the hospitality industry. We needed more people, particularly in London and the Southeast. Now, London and the Southeast was pretty much in full employment. Other areas around the UK had some unemployment, but you've got to bear in mind, remind yourself, like a year and a bit ago, we had the lowest unemployment since the 1960s in this country. So it's not that we had too many people looking for jobs. We were always looking for jobs. What's happened since is the fact that I think the pandemic acts as a disguise. It's this veil that's been thrown over everything else that's happening in the economy, in politics, etc. So we've forgotten that actually there were big, big warnings about what ending free movement after we leave the EU would do to the hospitality industry. And the questions weren't really answered. They weren't really answered. A lot of lobbying's been done, and yes, some small steps have been celebrated, i.e., lowering the threshold, the income threshold, widening the occupation list to have more jobs on there. But was it ever going to be enough? I don't think it was. It's because the reality is, if you look at £25,600 threshold, and if you look at the occupation list, so the person who works on the counter in Pret, in Cafe Nero, and Leon, wherever in London, who are they, and where do they come from? And I'm not sitting here saying we exploit people and whatever. I'm talking about giving people opportunities, because this is not, it's clearly an entry-level job, and it falls below the £25,600 threshold. Companies need those jobs in order to stay afloat, because we're a relatively low-margin industry anyway. And it's a stepping stone, because there's a lot of criticism from people in other industries who are saying, "Oh, just pay them more. You're exploiting foreign labor." I don't see it that way at all, because the one thing that the hospitality industry can really be proud of is the fact that we provide opportunities for people to move through the ranks. And I know so many examples firsthand of people who've moved from that counter role or wherever, but the first rung of the ladder, all the way up into directorships, etc. So I think the big question is, where are these people going to come from now? And clearly, new entrants to the UK don't qualify according to the new immigration system. So we're going to have to deal with the pool that we have available in the UK. And unfortunately, that pool is shrinking. We have, according to the Office for National Statistics, lost nearly 1 million people in the UK last year. Nearly 1 million people. And several 100,000 have left London alone. So the population of London has fallen below 9 million, and it's the first decline in population in London since the 1980s. And they're massive things, and we don't talk about it. So, the reminder is, we had an issue with not enough people before. Now, nearly 1 million people have left the country. It's not offset by unemployment. It isn't, because unemployment hasn't risen as much as we thought. I mean, yes, of all of the jobs that were lost in the UK, nearly half have been lost in the UK hospitality industry. But then we've also set up redeployment hubs last year, helping people to find jobs who sadly lost their jobs in other industries. And we have effectively promoted a move away from the hospitality industry. And as a result, now I know firsthand that a lot of them aren't coming back. And again, that's another issue. So they would be the people that I'm talking about. So yeah, that's what I wrote the article about. And it sounds a bit doom and gloom. I'm fully aware of it. I'm totally aware of it. But my point is, of course, you can look after your people. Of course, we have to look after our people. It's no longer optional. But we all know that. And I keep saying this. You cannot compare the hospitality industry of 2021 or 2020 to the reputation that the hospitality industry still has from 20 years ago. It's a changed industry. You just have to look at the Sunday Times best companies to work for. It's full of hospitality employers, and even in the top 10 or at the very top, all the time. So we really, I think, got our act together. We got our house in order. And therefore, you can't say that this is a terrible industry to work in. It's not. It's full of opportunities. It's fun. It's an amazing place to be. It really is very rewarding. But the long and short of it is, if we want to continue to grow our industry and provide opportunities for people and put more money into the exchequer for the government, then we need more people. And immigration is necessary for that. And at the moment, I just don't see a way around making that happen. The current system doesn't support it. So that was my point. Sounds a bit of a rant, doesn't it?
No, but because I think it's quite important to get that perspective, because we almost forgot a bit about Brexit and the consequences from a labor point of view, and what it will do to many businesses that's very dependent on that labor coming in to even if it's not restaurants. I think I've heard from tech startups people that they also struggle getting the right people into country, and now maybe they can still work remotely, but they still have to build a culture in the end of the day. So they would like to have their people coming into some kind of office or something at some point. So it's not only in the hospitality industry. I've heard that this is a challenge. But another thing I was thinking as you were laying out the foundation here for your thinking is that, is it do you still think that people, you mentioned 20 years ago, and I can remember McDonald's running, I was at McDonald's at that time, the McJob campaign across Europe in different formats. It was all about actually changing the perception of how it was to work at McDonald's. Do you think actually we ever got that changed in hospitality? Is that just because we believe it ourselves we changed it, but out in the wider world, people still think that working in hospitality is not very good and you're not treated very well?
Do you know what? You're taking the words out of my mouth. It is so refreshing to actually. We're quite good at telling ourselves how great we are. We really are, and actually, I think we have so much to shout about. We've come a long way, but I've been working in this industry all my life, and we've been having this same conversation ever since I worked in this industry. Right? How we have a bad reputation, and how it's so difficult to recruit from outside of the industry into the industry. Most people fall into the industry rather than come into it by choice, and they sort of get same with me. I just got stuck in hospitality as well. It was not my desire, but I just fell in love with it. But then we've been having that same conversation for such a long time, and I remember this was years ago, when I was at the restaurant group, the very first graduate fair that we did when we put a new graduate scheme together. So the idea was that for this very same reason, and you're going back, I don't know, at least 10 years or so, for this very same reason, we wanted to recruit people from outside the industry, fresh university leavers, not hospitality colleges, just any university. We want to recruit people into hospitality operations through an attractive graduate program, and we did. But the interesting thing is, we were the first careers fair, and I will never forget, we were wedged between KPMG and Aldi. Now, at the time, I mean, everybody who leaves university, lots of people want to go and work for KPMG, so they had this massive crowd outside their stand. And the same goes for Aldi, because they famously gave every graduate an Audi A4. So £40,000 and an Audi A4. So we had these flocks of people coming to KPMG and to Aldi, and we were in between with the restaurant group. It's like one of the biggest companies nobody's ever heard of, right? And we were basically sort of the holding and waiting area for KPMG and Aldi, and offering coffees and sweets to people who wanted a job elsewhere. But the opportunity was, we got talking to people, and we were able to educate people in 30 seconds to do the old elevator pitch as to, rather than one of these two big boys, how about consider this? Consider in 18 months' time, you manage a team of up to 30 people with 1.5 million annual turnover. You're in charge of that. Your earnings potential is actually not too dissimilar what you get next door. So, I promise you a lot of fun rather than just sweeping the car park. So, it's and a lot of people sat up and listened, and people who had never considered a career in hospitality all of a sudden became a target. And we hired some fantastic people. Some of them are still there from the early days, and some great success stories. And one of the guys who I mentored has now become a dear friend since. So it's great when you talk to people. It's not that far-fetched to suggest to somebody, look, consider a career in hospitality. But it's difficult for us as an industry to get that voice heard in schools and universities, I suppose, because we all chip away at it, and do our best. But I just still think there are, so many stigmas attached. Last year's was this. It was last year, Caterer.com's survey that nearly 90% of all school leavers had not been spoken to about a career in the hospitality industry by their careers advisor. So if that's still the case in 2020, then we need to have a serious conversation about this, because this is one route to tackle the problem that I'm talking about. But bear in mind that will take years. So I'm all for giving young people an opportunity. Amazing, awesome, bring it on, now. But it's not on its own. It's not going to solve the problem.
Yeah, because that's again a long term. It's like building in the reputation of the industry, and there's also now there's been a situation where everybody had looked at the industry. Everybody that I'm a parent myself, and parents has to advise their kids to do what to do in the future. No, I would love to go and do some hospitality. No, go and join the tech industry. I can almost hear the dinner table conversation turns around. And funny enough, my nephew and niece, one of them is finishing university, and she is. I can't even understand what this is going to go and do. There's something very intelligent with psychology and nanotechnology, and she's never. I asked her at one point just for fun, "Are you going to join the hospitality industry?" Because she worked in her young years in some restaurants environment. No, I'm going to go and do that because I know there's a future, and it's interesting. They actually believe there's no future in the industry, many of the young people. And I think that's a challenge again, perception. You said I didn't know it was 90% of people that didn't get the conversation about that restaurants is actually a career as well. But yeah,
I think it was anywhere somewhere between 89 and 91% or whatever of school leavers who had not been spoken to about careers in the hospitality industry. It was a survey that Caterer.com commissioned last year. I hope I'm quoting it correctly, but it's that significant a number, which leaves a lot of room for improvement, right? But yeah, no, you're right. In the last 12 months, you've heard a lot about hospitality, but you haven't heard a lot of good news about hospitality. So yeah, if you're a school leaver now, you'd go hunky dory. I'm going to go and work for the industry that's been battered. So yeah, there are probably safer bets. But that said, I have to say, and this is why there are so many good messages that we need to talk about. As I said, it sounds a bit doom and gloom, and I sound a little bit like I'm ranting. The reality is also, I genuinely believe that there are a ton of opportunities coming up for the hospitality sector to be booming yet again. I really do think so. Because the one thing is, I always quote it. I think if you compare hospitality to retail, for example, the Arcadia takeover deal, to me, was such a big moment where you actually think, do you know what, this says a lot about the direction of these two different industries, because to buy Arcadia without any of the assets, just the brands, tells you a lot about the direction of where retail is going. That the high street retail is playing a much more minor role in the future, whereas hospitality doesn't work like that. I think over the past 12 months, fair enough, everybody, Deliveroo and others have reaping the rewards, and they've been growing, and they've been keeping companies going, and they've been keeping customers supplied with meals, which is amazing. But I don't think that's a trend that's going to continue in that direction, because we're opening up again, and people can go into a pub, into a restaurant, and that's what hospitality is all about. You need to feel it, right? It was great that we had meal kits at home and delivery to our doorstep, restaurant food delivered to our doorstep, and some of it will probably stick. But I'm just talking about myself and everybody I know. I'd much rather be in a restaurant, whether it's indoors or outdoors, with people, socialize, and have the experience and feel it. That's what hospitality is all about. Hospitality is a feeling, and you can't provide that online anywhere near to the same effect that you could in a bricks and mortar business. So therefore, I think genuinely hospitality will. I put my house on it. Hospitality is going to have a great time. There will be, people. I see it already. You try and book a table in a pub at the moment. Good luck, right? So, and that's amazing. It's amazing. We wouldn't want to have it any other way. So, good luck to every hospitality operator, because I think there's certainly going to be demand, and there are opportunities for hospitality operators to grow. We just need the talent to back it up.
We talked about on the last conversation, we talked a lot about culture and values and leadership approach from going from a command and control to a more bottom-up approach, but also called permission to operate. Actually, you feel that you have some freedom to work. Is that a way forward for any hospitality business to become more attractive? Because we are quite good at that human thing when we get it right, also on the people journey. Also, you mentioned the last time that there's some businesses that just get that culture bit right, and that becomes attractive. You've seen, like, mentioned a couple of your colleagues, Union Square Hospitality in New York, even though they're going through a rough time, they've been quite good at taking care of the people with a relief fund. You have Burger here in the UK. You talk what you've done yourself to invest in your people journey. Do you think that's like become much more a competitive edge as we go forward as well, to actually attract these people that is in the pool?
Yeah, no, very much so. I mean, if not attract, then most definitely retain, and that's the first part of the problem, right? To make sure that you retain people, and there are some really, you mentioned some here. There are some companies that are doing extraordinary things to retain their people, which is obviously it's an absolute must. But that's how you create culture. The more you practice it, the more it rubs off, the more you breed good behaviors, etc., rather than just papering some values on a wall. We have, as I said, we have already got some really, really good examples in the UK hospitality industry, and there are companies that we can look up to. And it's not necessarily a race to the best benefits or whatever. It boils down to how you treat your people, how kind you are to people, that you say thank you to people, that you respect them and treat them as an individual and an adult. And I think we probably, whilst sort of over the past 12 months, the pandemic has been, and I mentioned it before, has been a disguise for some things. It's also been an amplifier for others. So, and things like the human-to-human contact that we crave so much, all of a sudden we know how important it is, and how important things like kindness and looking after each other. And those who were already doing it well before, they had a really good head start. And I hope that, I said at the beginning of our conversation, every applicant is also a customer. I'd like to think that some customers also get turned into applicants. So I hope that people understand how people are being treated in companies, because a lot of companies have been very good and some companies have been not so good. And I think it would be amazing if those companies who are doing the right thing would be rewarded as a result, both by customers as well as the people who go and want to work there. I've said, I think in our conversation last year, we touched on the, if you hire and recruit like-minded people, you're a step ahead, because you have a much, much stronger chance of succeeding. So if you can make it clear to people outside of your world what your company stands for, what your purpose is, what your values are, then it's easier for you to attract people who believe in the same things and see the world through the same pair of eyes as you do, and then you have a head start. So yeah, I think there are some of those companies that you named we should certainly look up to, because they're doing a lot of things very right.
Yeah, and I often say as well, look at what companies outside the industry is doing. You can look at Patagonia, Southwest Airlines, Lego. There's so many great companies that you can learn practices from, which you actually can, copy directly into hospitality, because it's a people process. It's not about a recipe to anything. The last question, Marco, before you need to run on and have the rest of your day happening. What is your top 3 advice to people out there that want to boost their people strategy to try to, avoid some of this talent crisis?
I think, number 1, be kind. Listen to your people genuinely. Lots of companies are running employee surveys so they can tick a box. I think this really listening in, doing the more snapshot versions, is really, really super important to listen to what people have got to say, so you can genuinely engage with what's important to people, and communicate.
Great, Marco. Thank you so much for coming on the show again. And if people want to find you, where the best place? I know you are quite active on LinkedIn, but any other places?
LinkedIn is the place to go. It's the place of choice. My Instagram is just photos of my family and holidays. And I don't tweet really. I'm on Twitter, but I don't tweet. I enjoy reading what other people tweet, but I don't actively tweet. I'm more active on LinkedIn.
So he is listening, which is a very good thing. That was one of his advice. Thank you so much, Marco. Power and energy to you and the team in the coming period ahead. There's a lot of challenges to conquer.
Thank you so much for having me, Michael.
Thank you so much, Marco, for this great overview on where you see the current labor crisis is and how to create strategies to navigate it. If you want to learn more about how you get competitive edge through your employees, I would recommend you to visit episode number 77 with Nicole Antonio Gatson, founder of Banana Pepper HR, where she will be talking about leading with care. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please share it, rate, review, or subscribe to one of our channels. A big thank you to BizSimply for supporting us, bringing great insights, strategies, and tools to help the industry thrive, not just survive. Check them out at bizsimply.com or on their social at bizsimply or bizsimplyhq, where you can also email them directly on advice@bizsimply.com. Also, a very big thank you to Fina Charlson, who is our show producer and editor from the Podcast Collective. Tune in next time for another interview, and in the meantime, find out more about us and subscribe to the community and download free leadership tools at hospitalitymavericks.com. And don't worry, if you didn't get all of this, there will be links in the show notes. Thank you, and be Maverick.